The Empire finds an impossible species. Commander Vex Valderan stood before the massive viewing screen in the Zarian Empire's central command. His forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the data streams flowing across the display. His crystalline skin caught the blue light from the holographic projections, creating patterns that shifted with his breathing. In his 300 years of service to the Empire, he had never seen anything quite like this. The Empire ruled over 12,000 star systems, controlling species from the gas-breathing Vorthok to the silicon-based Every conquest had followed the same pattern: initial contact, demonstration of superior firepower, negotiation of surrender terms, and integration into the Empire's vast bureaucracy. It was a system that had worked for millennia, bringing order to the chaos of galactic civilization, but the intercepted transmissions from the outer RIM suggested something different was happening. Something that made no sense according to every military doctrine the Empire had developed. "Show me the recording again," Dex commanded, his voice resonating through the chamber with the authority of his rank. Dr. Kira Zentex, the Empire's leading xenobiologist, manipulated the controls with her 6 delicate fingers. The holographic display changed to show a grainy communication intercept. The signal was weak, clearly from a primitive species, but the content was what had caught the Empire's attention. A voice spoke in a language their computers had quickly translated. "This is Colony 7 to Earth Command. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Enemy force is approximately 50 times our size. We have 17 fighters and a mining laser. Beginning defensive operations." Dex's eye stalks twitched, a sign of confusion among his species. Defensive operations, with 17 fighters against a fleet. "That's not even the strange part," Dr. Zentex replied, her blue-scaled face showing the same bewilderment. "Watch what happens next." The transmission continued. The same calm voice reported, "Enemy vessels are using standard intimidation tactics. We're implementing Protocol 7. All civilian craft are being converted to combat support. Miners are rigging explosive charges. Colony engineers are preparing the main reactor for overload deployment." "Overload deployment," Dex repeated. "They're planning to destroy their own colony." "As a weapon," Dr. Zentex confirmed. "But Commander, there's more. We monitored the battle. The unknown attackers you see in the transmission. They were called Raiders, a species we've dealt with before. By all logical calculations, the human colony should have been destroyed in minutes." The display shifted to show tactical data from the battle. Dex watched as the small human force engaged the Korthok fleet. The humans' tactics made no sense. Instead of forming proper battle lines, their ships scattered in random patterns. Instead of focusing fire on the largest enemy vessels, they targeted seemingly random points on different ships. "Their strategy appears completely chaotic," Dex observed. "No species fights like this. Where's the command structure? Where's the tactical coordination?" "That's what we thought," Dr. Zentex said. "But watch the results." The battle data showed something impossible. The Korthok fleet, which should have easily overwhelmed the human defenders, began to falter. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be, striking at moments when the enemy was vulnerable. The mining laser, which should have been useless against military vessels, somehow caused cascading failures in the Korthok shields. Haldex demanded. "We believe they're using something called improvisation," Dr. Zentex explained. "Instead of following predetermined tactics, each human vessel appears to be making independent decisions based on immediate circumstances. They're adapting faster than the Korthok computers can calculate responses. The recording showed the climax of the battle. The human colony's main reactor was indeed overloaded, but instead of destroying the colony, they somehow contained the explosion and directed it as a weapon. The energy pulse disabled half the Korthok fleet, and the remaining raiders retreated. In confusion, "Impossible," Vex muttered. "No species can control a reactor overload with that precision. The energy requirements alone should have killed everyone on the planet." The transmission logs show they lost 37% of their population in the battle, Dr. Zentex reported quietly, but they consider it a victory because they saved the colony. Vex turned away from the display, his mind racing. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered a species that would willingly sacrifice so many of their own people for such a small tactical advantage. Most civilized species would have surrendered when faced with such overwhelming odds. "What do we know about these humans?" he asked. Dr. Zentex activated another display. "They appear to be a young species. Technologically speaking, they've only achieved faster than light travel within the last century. Their home system is located in what we've classified as Sector 7749, approximately 47 light-years from our nearest outpost." Young and primitive, Vex mused. Yet they defeated a Korthok raiding fleet. "There's more, Commander. We've intercepted additional transmissions from other human colonies. They're all similar. Humans facing impossible odds and somehow surviving through methods that defy conventional military wisdom." The display showed a series of battle reports. Humans fighting off pirate attacks using converted cargo ships. Humans defending mining stations by turning asteroids into weapons. Humans surviving planetary invasions by retreating into underground tunnels and conducting guerrilla warfare for years. They don't surrender, Dex realized. Ever. Our psychological profiles suggest they have a fundamental inability to accept defeat, Dr. Zentex confirmed. Even when facing certain death, they continue fighting. It's as if the concept of hopeless odds simply doesn't exist in their thinking. Dex studied the data more carefully. Every human engagement showed the same pattern: initial disadvantage, chaotic tactics, impossible survival, and eventual victory or escape. It was completely contrary to everything the Empire understood about warfare. "Have we attempted contact?" he asked. "Standard first contact protocols were initiated 2 weeks ago," Dr. Zentex replied. "We sent a diplomatic vessel to their home system with the usual terms: surrender and integration into the Empire, or face military conquest." And their response? Dr. Zentex's expression grew even more confused. They asked if we were having a joke with them. When our ambassador explained that the Empire's offer was serious, they asked if we needed medical assistance because we seemed to be suffering from delusions of grandeur. Dex's eye stalks twitched again. They ... insulted us. It gets worse. They then offered to send humanitarian aid to help us recover from what they called obviously severe brain damage. For a moment, Dex stood in stunned silence. In the Empire's long history, no species had ever responded to their diplomatic overtures with mockery, fear, resignation, anger, even defiance, but never outright ridicule. What was the ambassador's response? He followed protocol and demonstrated our superior firepower by destroying an uninhabited moon in their system, Dr. Zentex reported. The humans thanked him for clearing away some space debris and asked if we could help them with some asteroids that were cluttering up their shipping lanes. Dex felt a chill run through his crystalline body. These humans either had no concept of the Empire's power, or they simply didn't care. Both possibilities were deeply disturbing. "Show me their military capabilities," he commanded. The display changed to show technical specifications of human vessels and weapons. Dex studied the data with growing confusion. By every measure, human technology was inferior to the Empire's. Their ships were smaller, their weapons less powerful, their defenses weaker. They shouldn't be able to survive against any of our client species, he observed. "That's what we thought," Dr. Zentex agreed. "But Commander, we've been monitoring their activities across 17 different sectors. Every time they encounter superior forces, they find a way to win or escape. They're disrupting trade routes, freeing enslaved populations, and generally causing chaos throughout our outer territories." Dex looked at the strategic display showing the Empire's vast territories. Small red dots indicated human activity, scattered across the rim worlds like a growing infection. "How many of them are there?" "Based on our intelligence estimates, approximately 8 billion humans across 47 colonies and their homeworld," Dr. Zentex replied. 8 billion, Dex repeated. "We have subjugated species with populations in the hundreds of billions. How can such a small group cause so much disruption?" "Because they don't fight like anyone else," Dr. Zentex explained. "They don't have a unified command structure, so destroying their leadership doesn't stop them. They don't have standardized tactics, so our countermeasures are useless. They don't have a concept of acceptable losses, so they continue fighting even when victory is impossible." Dex studied the display showing human colony locations. They were scattered across space with no apparent strategic pattern, established in systems that most species would consider worthless. Asteroid fields, unstable star systems, planets with hostile environments. "Why do they choose such difficult locations for their colonies?" he asked Asterisk. "We believe they see the challenges as advantages," Dr. Zentex replied. "Difficult conditions force them to become more resourceful. They seem to thrive on adversity." The implications were staggering. The Empire's strength lay in its ability to predict and control. They conquered species by understanding their weaknesses and exploiting them. But how do you conquer a species that turns weakness into strength? "Commander," Dr. Zentex continued, "there's something else. We've been monitoring communications between human colonies. They're sharing information about our tactics, our weaknesses, our supply routes. They're learning about us faster than we're learning about them." Dex felt another chill. Intelligence gathering was one of the Empire's most carefully guarded capabilities. The idea that a primitive species could outpace their intelligence operations was almost unthinkable. "What do they want?" he asked. "That's the most disturbing part," Dr. Zentex replied. "They don't seem to want anything from us. They're not trying to conquer our territory or steal our technology. They're just existing. And their existence is somehow threatening everything we've built." Dex turned back to the strategic display. The red dots representing human activity seemed to pulse with potential energy. Each one represented a colony that had survived impossible odds, a group of humans who had looked at the Empire's power and simply refused to be impressed. "Prepare a full intelligence report for the High Council," he ordered. "And Dr. Zentex, I want you to develop a comprehensive analysis of human psychology and tactics. We need to understand these creatures before they become a larger threat." "Yes, Commander. But what do we tell the Council about the threat level?" Dex studied the display one more time. 8 billion humans scattered across dozens of worlds with inferior technology and no unified government. By every logical measure, they should pose no threat to the Empire. But logic, he was beginning to realize, might not apply to humanity. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we may have found the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of what they can do, but because of what they refuse to accept." As Dr. Zentex left to prepare her reports, Dex remained before the display, watching the red dots that marked human colonies. Somewhere out there, 8 billion humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that the most powerful empire in galactic history was trying to figure out how to deal with them. The thought that worried him most was simple. What if they already knew and just didn't care? Humanity shows the galaxy what real danger looks like 3 months after Commander Vex Valderon's initial report. The situation had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. The High Council had dismissed his warnings about the human threat, declaring that no primitive species could challenge the Empire's established order. They had been catastrophically wrong. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human vessel, Resilience, watching as her tactical display showed the positions of 17 different fleets spread across 12 sectors. Each fleet represented a different human colony group, and each was currently engaged in what the humans had begun calling aggressive diplomacy with Empire forces. "Status report from all sectors," she called to her communications officer. "Sector 12 reports successful liberation of the Traxian slave markets," came the reply. "Admiral Rivera's group in Sector 15 has disrupted 3 Imperial supply convoys and redistributed the medical supplies to plague-affected worlds. The mining consortium in Sector 8 has converted 6 asteroid fields into defensive positions and is offering sanctuary to any species fleeing Imperial oppression." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The Empire had made their biggest mistake when they assumed humans would follow conventional military doctrine. Instead, humanity had done what they always did when faced with impossible odds. They had changed the rules of the game entirely. "Any response from Imperial Command?" she asked. "They're demanding we cease all hostile activities and submit to Imperial authority." Her communications officer reported with barely concealed amusement. "They've sent the same message 47 times in the last week." "Send them our standard reply," Sarah ordered. The standard reply had become something of a legend among human forces. It was simple, direct, and had apparently caused several Imperial commanders to request psychological counseling. "Thank you for your concern. We're doing fine. Please mind your own business." Meanwhile, in the Imperial Command Center, Commander Vex Valderon was experiencing what humans might have called a nervous breakdown. The strategic display before him showed a galaxy in chaos, and at the center of every disturbance was a small group of humans who seemed incapable of understanding that they were supposed to be afraid. "Report," he demanded as Dr. Zentex approached with the latest intelligence updates. "The situation continues to deteriorate," she replied, her voice strained with exhaustion. "Human forces have now engaged Imperial assets in 23 different sectors. But Commander, they're not just fighting us. They're teaching other species to fight like them." Dex felt his eye stalks droop with despair. "Explain." "The Vorthok resistance movement has adopted human guerrilla tactics and successfully liberated 3 of their home systems. The Christic miners have started using human-style, improvised weapons and have driven Imperial overseers off 17 mining worlds. The Aquatic Confederation has learned human underwater combat techniques and has made their ocean worlds completely inaccessible to our forces." The display showed the spreading chaos. Red zones marked areas where Imperial control had been lost or severely compromised. Each zone represented millions of beings who had suddenly decided they didn't need the Empire's protection or authority. "How are they doing this?" Vex asked. "Our psychological profiles indicated most species prefer stability and predictable governance. That's the problem," Dr. Zentex explained. "Humans don't just fight for themselves. They fight for what they call principles. They've convinced other species that freedom is more valuable than security." Dex studied a tactical report from Sector 19, where a human fleet half the size of an Imperial battle group had somehow convinced an entire Imperial garrison to defect. The humans had simply broadcasted their philosophy across all communication channels. Everyone deserves the right to make their own choices, even bad ones. "They're using propaganda?" he asked. "It's more than that," Dr. Zentex replied. "They're demonstrating their beliefs through their actions. When they liberate slave markets, they don't install their own governors. They help the freed slaves establish their own governments. When they disrupt our supply lines, they make sure the supplies reach planets that need them. They're not trying to build an empire of their own. They're trying to destroy the concept of empire entirely." The implications were staggering. For millennia, the Zarian Empire had maintained control by being the strongest force in any given region. But humans weren't trying to be stronger. They were making strength irrelevant by changing the fundamental nature of the conflict. "What do our military analysts recommend?" Dex asked. Dr. Zentex hesitated. "Commander, our analysts have requested reassignment to other duties. 3 of them have submitted reports claiming that human tactics are militarily impossible, and therefore cannot be studied using conventional methods." Dex turned to study the display showing human fleet movements. The patterns made no sense. Human ships appeared in locations where they had no strategic value, engaged in battles they couldn't win, and somehow achieved objectives that weren't on any known tactical checklist. "Sir," a junior officer approached nervously. "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet in Sector 7. They're requesting a meeting." "A meeting?" Dex asked. "To discuss surrender terms." "No, sir. They say they want to talk about mutual cooperation and shared galactic prosperity. They've also included what they call a friendship basket with food samples from 47 different human worlds." Dex stared at the young officer. "They sent us food?" "Yes, sir. The scanning department says it's all safe to consume and actually quite nutritious. There's also a note saying they hope we're eating well because proper nutrition is important for clear thinking." For several moments, Beck stood in stunned silence. The humans were treating the entire galactic conflict as if it were a misunderstanding between neighbors. "Put them through," he finally said. The display changed to show Captain Sarah Chen standing calmly on her ship's bridge. She appeared completely relaxed, as if she were about to discuss something as mundane as shipping schedules. "Commander Valderin," she said with what appeared to be genuine warmth, "thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I hope you received our care package. The chocolate is from our colony on New Geneva, and I think you'll find it particularly interesting." "Captain Chen," Dex replied, struggling to maintain his composure. "You are currently engaged in hostile activities against the Zarian Empire. This constitutes an act of war." Sarah's expression showed polite confusion. "I'm sorry, Commander, but I think there's been some misunderstanding. We're not at war with anyone. We're just living our lives and helping our neighbors when they ask for assistance. You have attacked Imperial facilities and disrupted Imperial operations across multiple sectors," Dex said. "Destroy?" Sarah looked genuinely surprised. "Commander, We don't want to destroy anything. We want to help you build something better. An empire based on fear and oppression isn't sustainable long term. History shows that such systems always collapse eventually, usually with tremendous suffering for everyone involved. Dex studied the human captain's face. She appeared to be completely sincere, which somehow made her more terrifying than any military threat. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. "A voluntary galactic confederation," Sarah replied enthusiastically. "Each species maintains sovereignty over their own territories, but we work together on common challenges like disease, natural disasters, and resource shortages. We share technology, culture, and knowledge freely. Everyone benefits, and no one has to live in fear." "That's completely impossible," Dex said. "Species are naturally competitive. Without a strong central authority, there would be constant warfare." "Really?" Sarah asked. "Because from what we've observed, most of the current warfare in this galaxy is caused by your empire trying to maintain control over species that don't want to be controlled. Remove the empire, and you remove most of the conflict." Dr. Zentex leaned forward. "Captain Chen, your proposal assumes that species can cooperate without coercion. Our historical data indicates this is unlikely." "Dr. Zentex right," Sarah said. "I've read your papers on interspecies psychology. Very impressive work. But I think your data might be biased because it only includes species living under imperial rule. When people are oppressed, they tend to be more aggressive and suspicious. It's a natural survival response." The conversation continued for another hour, with Sarah calmly addressing every objection the imperial officers raised. She spoke about human colonies that had successfully integrated with alien refugees, about trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation, about scientific cooperation that had led to breakthroughs neither species could have achieved alone. When the transmission ended, Dex stood in silence for several minutes. "Commander," Dr. Zentex asked quietly, "what are we going to tell the High Council?" Vex looked at the strategic display one more time. The red zones continued to spread as more species adopted human philosophies and tactics. But for the first time, he noticed something else. The areas where humans were active showed increased trade, decreased conflict, and improved living conditions for all inhabitants. "We're going to tell them the truth," he said finally. "Humanity isn't trying to conquer the galaxy. They're trying to fix it. And they're succeeding." "Sir, the High Council won't accept that assessment." "Then the High Council will have to learn what every other species in this galaxy is learning," Dex replied. "Humans don't care if something is impossible. They just do it anyway." Over the following weeks, the situation reached a critical point. The High Council ordered a massive military response, assembling the largest fleet in Imperial history to crush the human rebellion once and for all. But when the fleet arrived at the coordinates where human forces were supposed to be, they found something unexpected. The humans were gone. In their place was a massive space station, clearly built by multiple species working together. Representatives from dozens of different worlds were present, and they had prepared a formal proposal for the Imperial Fleet Commander. The proposal was simple. The Empire could join the new Galactic Confederation as an equal partner, maintaining their territories but abandoning their oppressive policies. In return, they would have access to the combined knowledge and resources of all member species. The alternative was isolation. The Confederation would simply ignore the Empire, trading with each other and sharing technology while the imperial worlds stagnated in their rigid system. It wasn't a threat of war. It was something far more dangerous, the threat of irrelevance. As Admiral Marcus Rivera later told his staff, "We didn't defeat the Empire. We made them realize that empires are an outdated concept. The future belongs to those who can cooperate, adapt, and grow together." The galaxy was changing, and humanity had shown everyone what real danger looked like. Not the power to destroy, but the power to make destruction unnecessary. Asterisk.